Greetings and salutations. Welcome to Knife Chats with Tobias. This is a video I've been thinking about doing for quite some time now. It's a video on basically the history of the doctor's knives. And what prompted me to finally get off my duff and do it is this knife here. This is the Barehead doctor's knife in the Rough Rider Spades Black Appaloosa Bones series. This is for the 30th anniversary. It's a single blade doctor's knife, and like they said, it's a barehead version, which, well, we'll get to that in a minute, but let's talk a little bit about the history of the doctor's knives. Now, first, we call them a doctor's knife today. When they were first around, they were called physician's knives. They weren't called doctor's knives. And the other thing is for some time, they were also called pill busters by collectors before they started calling them doctor's knives. And the reason for this is that the pattern, the physician's knife, actually first showed up sometime after the American Civil War. So sometime around the very late 1860s, or maybe as late as 1880, that they finally started showing up and getting used. And they kind of faded into obscurity right around the time of World War I. So by around 1920, they weren't really something that were being made anymore. Maybe the occasional doctor's knife or physician knife would be being made, but it was pretty uncommon by that time. Now, one thing you see these days with the physician knife is you see basically three different versions of the physician knife. One of them is, a single blade version with just a long spear blade. The other version you see is a two-blade version that has a spatula blade, a very specialized blade that you only find, or you think that you would only find on a physician's knife, but another knife also had the spatula blade on it. And then finally, the third version that you will often find will have the long spear blade, and then the secondary blade will be a pin blade, and often a long pin blade. So those are the blades that you'll usually see on a physician knife. And then they will have this flat bottom there. It's usually somewhat of a teardrop shape, but it's very slim. It's a slim pattern. The front bolster is smaller than the back end of the knife, but sometimes it's hard to discern the difference. Sometimes it's a little easier. And the bottom is almost always flat, and that is the pill buster end, and it's really because of what the knives were designed for use or to do. Now, like I said, we call them a doctor's knife now, and they were called a physician's knife back when they were first getting made. And that's because medicine was not the same as it is today. Anyone who's done any kind of study on the history of medicine will know that you kind of had two kinds of doctors out there. One of them was the doctor who would basically treat everything with a pill or a salve or something like that. And then the other doctors were surgeons, and surgeons basically cut things out of people or cut things off of people and stuff like that. And the two didn't always get along. And so what these knives were designed for were really for physicians. Physicians were people who treated most ailments with some kind of medicine. And this is just a little interesting side note. Even as late as after the American Civil War, you still had this going on where, you'd go to the physician in town and say you had a broken leg or something. Well, he wasn't the person who was going to be able to set that leg. A physician would not be able to actually do that. It wasn't something he would do. And you might not want to go to the surgeon either, because the surgeon would go, oh, well, you broke your ankle. Well, there's not much I can do about that except cut it off, because it's going to get infected and you're going to get, gangrene and die. So we'll just have to cut your foot off, something like that. So sometimes the best option was for you to go to that horse doctor instead of a physician or a surgeon, because the horse doctor or veterinarian actually kind of knew how to set bones, where sometimes the physician didn't know how to set a bone, and neither did a surgeon. You got to understand, it's not like today. Medicine wasn't regulated that well or anything else. Basically, someone could go through a mail order catalog and become a physician or a surgeon or whatever, or they might study under some other surgeon for a week or two and then go hang out a shingle and say they're a surgeon now too. So, and the same thing with physicians. So it's really kind of a weird time for medicine. And there's a reason why you ended up getting medicine regulated and everything because of that. And so, for instance, like if you had a gunshot wound, you might have a physician who would he would not even attempt to dig out the bullet unless, you know, it was something he could reach in and feel with his finger. Whereas a surgeon might end up doing some cutting and dig in there a little bit and find that bullet and pull it out. So a physician might just say, well, I'm going to apply some of this salve so that it won't get infected, and it'll help control the pain, and then we're just going to keep it bandaged. Whereas a surgeon might go in there and dig it out, and then you would get it bandaged up and stuff like that. So it really depended on who you were seeing and everything else. But like I said, now these knives were made for the physician, not the surgeon. And so this primary blade on this knife, your spear blade, this was not any kind of surgical tool or anything else. I suppose you could use it to like lance a boil or something like that, but it really wasn't like a probe or anything else. It was really used to get stuff out of bottles. Like if you had a powder or something in a bottle, you would actually be using the long blade to get into the bottle and pull it out. Or if it was all caked up in the bottom, you'd use it to break up the powder so that it would flow out of the bottle a little easier. And it was also used to actually mix stuff up. So it was, you'd mix up a salve with it and everything else. The other thing, the spatula blade that you have on the knives, such as this is not the way the spatula blades were on the original knife. If you notice, there's absolutely no real flex in this blade. The original spatulas on the early physician knives from back in the late 1800s, early 1900s, they were made out of a spring steel, and they were much thinner than this, and they were flexible. So they're closer to what you see on this. This is a pharmacist spatula that, well, you can see there, always display NP, and you see this Tums thing here. And this is was probably made back in the 70s or 80s, and you can see here Ulster Knife Company. So this is made by Ulster Knife Company, most likely for, obviously for like a convention or something where Tums was giving these knives away to pharmacists or possibly physicians and stuff. But this is closer to the way the spatula would have been made. And if you notice, it's much thinner and it's flexible. And that's the way the original spatulas were. Now, the spatula was not designed to be used for a tongue depressor or anything like that. Of course, I guess if you really needed to, you could use it for a tongue depressor. But it was really used to sort stuff out, sort pills, or also if you had some powder out on a hard surface, you would use the spatula to separate out however much powder you needed to mix in with your salve. And then once you had it on a plate or something, you might stir it a little bit with the spatula as well. So the spatula in some ways functioned the same way as the main blade did, but it was a better tool for it. So that's if you saw one with the spatula, it was a little bit more expensive and everything else, and the spatula actually had some very specialized uses for it. The other thing that you have on the knives is a pillbuster bottom. Now, what you see on this one, like the bare head here, you notice you can see the back of the spring and everything else. And on this one, you have a bolster, which is a little bit better than a bare head. So the bone on this one would be subject to cracking and stuff if you actually used it as a pill buster, because what you would be doing is using this as part of a mortar and pestle, and you'd have it in the mortar, and you'd be smashing stuff and breaking it up and everything. So if you had it as a bare head, you could easily chip off pieces of the bone or something like that. With these, you have multiple layers here, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but that's not the way the original pill buster bottom was done. The original pill buster bottom was like so. It is a separate piece. It isn't part of the back spring. It isn't part of the liners and the bolster and stuff. It is an actual separate piece that is pinned to the back of the knife. Notice how, let's open the blade here. Notice how you've got that thickness going in there, and that is actually down in there, and then you can't see it here, but it would be pinned underneath the pearl, and that is how it is held in place. And on original ones, this would most likely be made out of silver, and it was used to work in the mortar and pestle. So this was actually something you would use to be busting up pills, or you'd be mixing crushing powder and everything else with this to turn it into a finer powder. And that's the way the actual bottoms were. This is the actual pill buster bottom. Now this is one made in the 1980s, but this is probably the closest you're going to find to the way original doctor's knives or physician's knives were made, with that flat bottom that was a separate piece that was actually attached with a pin into the frame of the knife. You didn't just run it all the way around to the end like we see on so many of the other knives here. This is by Parker Frost, and it's called the Little Pill Buster, which is really an interesting name for it, because while they call it the Little Pill Buster, this is about the size of a genuine doctor's knife from the 1800s, in that it comes in right at a little over 3.5 inches. It's, you know, not quite 3 3/4, but very close to it. And that's really the size of the original doctor's knives, about 3.5 to 3 3/4 inches. So all of these knives are about the approximate size, with the exception of this one. This is the first one I bought. This was by Schrade, and it's in burl wood. You see right there. Got a nice straight blade on there, nice pin blade going on. And you notice how straight it is there, which is the way the doctor's knife should be. Overall length on this one is about 5 3/4 inches. The handle length on it, though, when you have it all closed up, comes in right at 3 1/8 inch. So this would be kind of small for an original doctor's knife. And obviously the pill buster bottom isn't on there. That's something else. The case doctor's knives also do not have a pill buster bottom. They just have similar to what you see on the Rough Rider here. This is, like I said, this is kind of the way the other doctor's knives would have been, with the secondary pin blade. And this is probably the most common style of physician knife, with the long spear blade and the short pin blade, or relatively long pin blade, but not as long as the spear blade. And this would do a lot of the cutting chores that they needed to do and everything else. And you have the long blade that does stuff like digging stuff out of bottles and stuff like that. And then, well, the pill buster bottom, but not quite perfect on this one. This one also comes in at 3 3/4 inches, which is, or yeah, just under 3 3/4 inches, about 3 5/8 inches. This one I do like quite a bit. I do like quite a few functions on it. It has a nice half stop on it. It does have a nice thin blade on there. The only problem I have with it is that the blade has that cant to it. It would have been nicer if it would have been straight along the body of the knife, but it isn't. Let's see, so this one obviously isn't pearl. This is actually genuine mother of pearl. And this is closer to the kind of a handle material you would have had on the original physician knives. They tended to be in something like mother of pearl, or in something like ivory or something like that. I'm shocked that I don't have one in white smooth bone yet. I'm going to have to go ahead and pick it up. Okay, before I start talking about these two, I do have another one. This one is by Steel Warrior, and this one is in their, what is it called? Similar to tree resin handle scales, whatever that means. In any case, this is one I picked up. It's got like a little sparkle to it and everything. And this one, you can see the tree in there too. This is pretty nice looking. This is Steel Warrior's, one of Steel Warrior's answers to a physician knife, and it's got the the Spear Master blade, and it also has a spatula going on here. And the spatula, once again, does not have any flex to it. Got nice brass liners and stuff, and again, not a proper pill buster bottom. This one comes in at right at the same length, about 3 5/8 of an inches long and everything. And it's a pretty nice looking knife. I do like the way it looks and everything. The reason I wanted to bring it up though is see the pill buster bottom here. Well, this is also another Steel Warrior. And this one has numerous problems with it. So you have to be very careful when you're looking at your Steel Warrior physician knives. Well, the first problem with this one is it doesn't have any kind of nail nick, so there's no way to pull the blade out. I've been trying to grind a nail nick in there, but failing miserably right now. The big problem though is notice that it has an incomplete pill buster bottom. So if you're going to look at picking up a Steel Warrior physician knife, make sure you have seen quite a few pictures of it to make sure that it's at least semi complete. It has a proper pill buster bottom, and that it has a nail nick on the spatula blade or any other blades on it. This one, I mean, I looked multiple times at it before I even bothered to pick it up. I wanted to make sure it had the nail nick and the pill buster bottom. Now, you're not going to see those issues with the Rough Rider knives, but you are going to run into some other kind of discrepancies when it comes to physician knives among some of the newer Rough Rider knives. And I think a lot of it started with this knife here, which is not a physician knife at all. It's called the Pipe Doctor. Well, you can see the pipe there for it. And what it is basically a pipe smoker's tool built on a physician knife frame. I'll talk more about this knife when I start talking about my pipe smoker's tools. But if you notice, you've got the pill buster end down here. Well, now it's the tamper on a pipe smoker's knife. And you also have the long pin here, which is a tool used on a pipe smoker's tool. It's all used for stirring the tobacco and stuff like that. This is for tamping down the tobacco. And then they have a sheepfoot blade on it instead of a pin blade. And that has since moved on to a lot of the physician knives that Rough Rider makes. They have a sheepfoot blade on quite a few of them. And they also have a tendency to put a clip blade on a lot of their physician knives. And to me, that just looks odd. I know a lot of people are going to want it because of the variety and stuff, but I really prefer to find a physician knife with the proper blades on it. So I like the long spear blade over a sheepfoot blade or a clip blade when it comes to this frame. I think it looks better on it and everything else. And well, you got the pin blade there too. The Rough Rider physician knives that have a spatula blade tend to have a spatula blade similar to this in that it is too thick. I would love it if Rough Rider were to come out with this, or a Rough Rider Reserve physician knife that had a proper pillbuster bottom and a proper thin flexible spatula on it. That would be fantastic. I doubt it will happen, but that's what I would really like to see. The thing is most people today assume this is the way the spatula is supposed to be, but it's not. That spatula really should be flexible like what you see here. And it obviously can be done. It's something that would be cool for them to bring back, but you probably won't see it happen. With that said, I guess I'll wrap this up. I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you enjoyed hearing a little bit about the real physician knives that were made, you know, back in the 1880s and late early 1900s, as opposed to the ones that are being made today and the ones that were made back in the 1980s. But that's cool. That's what we really need to see. They could at least get the pillbuster bottom correct. And that, I think, is something that would set a modern pillbuster knife apart from what everyone else is doing with them. Now, the other thing I mentioned about I didn't really mention, but I should have mentioned about the spatula, is a lot of these knives, they made a lower quality knives sort of like this that just had a spatula on it. And it was a similar spatula to what you see here, you know, a very flexible spatula. And that was an artist's knife. It was actually a folding artist's knife that had a spatula on it. And I can picture a more successful artist could have also ended up grabbing a physician's knife and using that because of the, you know, if it had a spatula blade as an artist's knife. So the physician's knife is something that shares some aspects with the artist's spatula knife. So in any case, thought I'd share that with you too. Let me take a moment and interject something here. The most produced version of the doctor's knife is the one that has two blades, the Spearmaster blade and then a secondary pin blade. That is the most produced. The second most produced, and almost in the same number as this, from what I understand, this is the second most produced, the single blade doctor's knife. I might be wrong on that, but that's what I understand. This was the most produced. This is the second most produced, but this is very close to this in the numbers. And then the one with the spatula blade is really the one that was the least produced. It doesn't mean they weren't quite a few of them out there, but the spatula blade version is the one that was the least produced of the physician knives. However, it is also the one that was often the one that the collectors look for, because it does have the spatula blade and it is kind of a unique blade on a knife. So most sought after by the collector, but most produced. Let me take just a second to thank you once again for dropping by and spending a few minutes here at Knife Chats with Tobias. I really do appreciate it, and I do appreciate any comments that you leave. So please remember to give me that thumbs up, and also don't forget to subscribe and ring that notification bell so you'll know when the next episode is up and running. Thanks again for dropping by. Really do appreciate your time here.